Now joining John for our next conversation, Creating a Climate for Innovation, please welcome Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack.
Thank you very much, and welcome, Secretary. We're honored that you're able to join us today, and good morning, or maybe it's good afternoon where you are. I'm here in California.
Well, it's good afternoon, but it's a good day wherever you are.
Excellent. Maybe I'll just kick it off in terms of your priorities for the food system post-COVID, and also, how are you planning to ensure food security for all Americans?
This is a great question, and it's going to take me just a minute or two to answer it because we've got a lot going on at USDA. I would say we're moving from a production focus at USDA to a profit focus. And the reason being that nearly 90% of farms today don't generate the majority of income for the folks who own and operate the farm. So I think we have to shift from focusing primarily on production to profitability as well. And that means more new and better markets. And when I talk about more markets, basically I'm talking about everything from exports to local and regional food systems that create new ways and new opportunities for farmers to sell whatever it is they're growing. I think it's important on the trade side to understand that we need to diversify. We need to be less reliant on one or two countries and more reliant on a number of countries. And so deepening our presence in Southeast Asia, focusing our efforts eventually in Africa, working to make sure we're maximizing our opportunities in Central and South America, and making sure that agreements that are in place, trade agreements in place, are actually followed through. Certainly USMCA being a prime example. When we talk about local and regional food systems, we're really talking about a more resilient system. We found during COVID that it didn't take much to disrupt our system, in part because we were so concentrated. And I think we're going to begin to see a balance between concentration and efficiency with resiliency. And I think you're going to see us continue to invest more money in everything from farmers markets to food hubs to a variety of ways in which we can create that connection between small and mid-sized producers and a market opportunity. When we talk about new markets, we're talking about the opportunity to maximize and monetize, if you will, the carbon economy. The opportunity for us to take a look at ways in which we can pay farmers for the storage of carbon, the sequestration of carbon, incenting climate-smart agricultural practices, increasing revenue opportunities, developing bio-based manufacturing opportunities where ag waste is being converted into a variety of products. And when we talk about better markets, we're really talking about open, transparent, and competitive markets, the opportunity for farmers to get a fair shake in the marketplace. And this, I think, is going to focus us on increasing the amount of processing capacity that we have in the United States. Again, we found out through COVID significant issues with the consolidation of processing, easy to disrupt that system. Let me just say one other thing about the question that you asked. In addition to the fact that we need to make sure that we have greater equity, making sure that farmers of all sizes and diverse socially disadvantaged farmers are impacted and affected positively by what we're doing at USDA. We also have to shift, I think, our focus on food insecurity. We keep talking about the necessity of getting food to people. We need to talk about the necessity of getting good, nutritious food to people. No secret here. We have an obesity crisis in this country, impacting our young people in particular, but certainly having an impact on adults and on healthcare costs, on productivity, and the need for us to begin looking at ways in which USDA's programs, nutrition assistance programs, not only focus on providing food, but making sure that that food is nutritious. So a lot going on in USDA in terms of the food system, transforming it, if you will.
Excellent. Thank you, Secretary. The last administration, prioritized, the innovation imperative, and obviously that's the world we live in, here in the ag tech and agri-food tech world. What's your plan to supercharge innovation and drive adoption of technology into the fields and farms?
I think we have to broaden the approach a little bit. I think the focus of the previous administration was on increasing productivity of certain crops. I think we have to take a look at ways in which innovation can make a difference so that eventually we reach President Biden's vision of a net zero emission agriculture. There are a lot of opportunities in that space for new technologies, new ways to do business, new ways to be more precise with the agriculture that we do on our land, new ways to conserve, reuse water resources, because we're going to face a serious challenge in that regard. So first and foremost, I think broadening the scope of innovation with a climate smart focus. Secondly, is making sure that we invest adequately in research. It isn't enough to basically require or demand or ask of the private sector to handle the burden and to bear the burden of research. I think we have to have a much more significant impact and investment in basic research. The President's American Jobs Plan calls for a significant increase in publicly financed research, and we certainly would be supportive of that. And I think it's also about taking a look at our regulatory systems. I mean, the reality is that you can have all the innovation in the world, but if your regulatory system slows the process down from getting it from the lab to the farm, it does very little good. So looking at ways in which we can streamline the decision-making process so that we spend less time focusing on the regulatory side without sacrificing the importance of safety and making sure that whatever technologies we're putting into the field makes sense.
And I know this is an area where I'm sure you've had continuous focus on is rural connectivity. It's a critical part to enable smart farming, and it also continues to be a challenge. What's your plan here, and maybe how can we help? How can the private sector partner here to be able to enable and fire up farms around the U.S.?
First and foremost, this is going to sound like a broken record, but the American Jobs Plan, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Plan, contains the kind of resource that needs to be focused on this effort of connecting people, and not just providing broadband, but having meaningful broadband connection, having the uploads and download speeds that make sense. So it's very, very important that we have an infusion of not $1 billion here and there, but tens of billions of dollars to really understand the private sector is not going to connect that remote community of 500 folks. It's not going to allow that farmer in that remote community to have the access that he or she needs. So it's going to have to be the public sector doing this, just as we electrified rural America. So number one, supporting that effort would be important. And two, recognizing that it's not just about broadband access. It's what you do with it. I mean, you can have access, but if nobody understands how to use it fully and completely, or is afraid to use it, or has fear about the privacy or the ability to have people hack their business operations, it's going to be important and necessary for us to make sure that we strengthen our cybersecurity systems so there isn't the easy ability to work into a system and cause the kind of disruption we recently saw with JBS. So it's hardening our system and making sure people understand how to do that. And then finally, recognizing that it is a tool. It is by no means a panacea. It is by no means the answer to bring economic opportunity back to rural America. You have to have business opportunities that are connected to that broadband access so that you have access now to global market opportunities. But if you don't have businesses producing product or farms producing product, having broadband access, it isn't going to bring jobs back to a community.
Yeah, very, very, very good. I think we reached out to a few of our CEOs from various different producers and leading technology companies, and asked them a few questions to share with you today. And I think the hot topics, as you probably know, are around climate, innovation, and trade. And John Buckley, who's CEO of Wilbur Ellis, always when you ask a CEO one question, he'll come up with two questions. But what practices do you see farmers adopting to address climate change? How will USDA incentivize those practices? And then second part of the question is, will the Biden administration put together a trade deal similar to the Trans-Pacific Partnership? And how about a trade deal with the EU that includes ag?
That's three questions, I think. Look, there are 45 different climate smart practices that we've identified that we want to use our conservation programs, our EQIP program, our CSP program, our Regional Conservation Partnership program, and all of the other programs that are NRCS mission area to basically provide resources for cover crops, for rotational grazing, for reforestation, for a variety of things that we know make a difference in terms of climate smart agriculture. I think we also want to use our rural development resources to provide assistance and help with anaerobic digesters. We want to work collaboratively with other departments of the federal government to create new opportunities. I think there's an exciting opportunity in the area of aviation biofuel, for example. So I think there are a variety of ways in which we can provide help and assistance. This is a broken record here, but the American Jobs Plan does contain additional money to support climate smart agriculture. And we obviously will be looking at the passage of that bill, the resources within that bill, the Climate Solutions Act that Senator Stabenow and others passed through the Senate, now in the House. Hopefully that gets passed, that creates a structure and framework that enables us to have some legitimacy with this effort. On the trade side, look, I'm not going to tell the U.S. Trade Representative how to do her job. She's incredibly qualified and doing a terrific job of initially focusing on making sure that the agreements we do have are followed through. We have some serious issues with follow through in terms of the USMCA, the trade agreement that replaced NAFTA. Our Canadian friends, we're now in a process where we really want them to take a look at the way in which they've implemented the provisions of that agreement in dairy, because frankly they haven't, in our view, implemented it in a way that was intended, and certainly we understood when the agreement was reached. That's an example. I think there's an over-reliance on China right now. That's a big market. It's a big opportunity for us. Obviously, we're much better off without a trade war than we were with a trade war with China in terms of agriculture. But that's a complicated relationship, and anything can disrupt it at any point in time, which is why I think it is going to be important at the appropriate time for the administration to take a look at where there are new partnerships, new arrangements, new connections. The Trans-Pacific Partnership was an opportunity in Southeast Asia. Can we get back into that? What would we have to give and what could we get? Those are things that have to be determined. Obviously, we're going to take a different attitude about trade agreements to make sure that we're not doing it at the sacrifice of American workers or American businesses. But I think we'll always be looking for opportunities. On the EU side, look, this is really, really difficult. Until the EU gets really serious about a comprehensive trade agreement, and by that I mean they get serious about coping with the politically sensitive and difficult issues that they have on agriculture, we're not going to have a trade agreement with the EU. I don't believe. We're certainly not going to be able to get it through our political process if agriculture is not dealt with in a fair and reasonable way. I would hope that would happen. I think it's in the best interest of European consumers and of U.S. consumers for it to happen. There's a significant trade deficit today between the two. We have a significant trade deficit with the EU, in part because their market is closed in many respects. Our market is much more open, whether it's GIs or whether it's genetically engineered crops or whether it's hormones. There are a series of really tough issues, but we've got to come to grips with them. We've got to deal with them. We've got to find the sweet spot if there is to be an agreement with the EU.
Excellent. As an Irishman living in Silicon Valley, I'm all behind this, as you can imagine. Liam Condon, who's CEO of Bayer Crop Science, again, it's climate and innovation related. The Biden administration has put tremendous focus on solving the climate crisis. Innovation is key to that success, yet there is a danger as we move into a new era of climate smart policymaking in agriculture specifically. That innovation is rejected. For example, focusing on policies that are limiting technologies access and inputs instead of focusing on the outputs achieved with innovation. What can this administration do to lead the world towards accepting innovation in agriculture to help us solve the climate challenge?
I think explaining and understanding that there is no one single answer in this space, that we really do need a sort of a comprehensive approach. We need a value-added approach. We need an opportunity for organic production, for regenerative agriculture to find a place and to find the level of support necessary. You'll see that from this administration. But we also, I think, recognize and appreciate that if we're going to be serious about water, for example, we've got to figure out how crops can be designed in a way that they will use less water. If we're serious about greenhouse gas emissions, we've got to figure out how to engineer our crops so that they absorb more carbon, they put more of that carbon in the nutrients that they're producing, and that they are able to filter it down into a root system that ultimately is retained in the soil and increases and enhances the productivity of the soil, also provides a much better opportunity for improved water quality. I mean, we have to have both. We can't use one or the other. We have to look for opportunities to expand both, and then to make sure that there's always a conversation taking place within agriculture, that we don't get back to the day when, instead of talking to the rest of the world and the rest of the country about the importance of our food system and the importance of what agriculture does for the country, we end up being involved in a squabble within agriculture. The voice gets interplayed between the 1% or 2% that farm, and the other 98, 99% have no idea what's going on. There's so much excitement in this space. Your earlier program had virtual agriculture. That's an exciting opportunity for certain crops and commodities. Urban agriculture, rooftop gardens, community gardens, another opportunity here, especially in socially disadvantaged neighborhoods, to create not only food supply, but also new job opportunities, to open up the fact that agriculture is an exciting area for young people, so that we can encourage more young people to get into the ag space. And then not to necessarily disparage production agriculture, because in reality, consumers have asked for this system. They've asked for food that's relatively inexpensive. They've asked for food that's easily prepared and quickly prepared. And there's a consequence to that. And as our food choices change, that's obviously going to send a message to the market. The market's going to respond. We at USDA have to be in a position to be able to support that shift and to be able to help lead that shift. And that's why you'll see an uplifting of organic. You'll see a continued emphasis on regenerative practices as it relates to climate smart agriculture. You'll see new revenue sources being created for farmers so that we are able to have more of our farms be profitable.
Thank you, Secretary. I have one quick last question for you. And it's a 100-year-old organization, the leader in berries, Driscoll Berries, which we just had them on. Miles Ryder is the chairman and CEO. His question is, the previous administration attempted to close the border to fresh fruits and vegetables, products like cucumbers and peppers. What role does innovation play in offering a way out of these ruinous trade wars?
Well, I think it's important. First of all, I start my day just about every day with Driscoll Berries in my yogurt. So just a plug for the company. They got great blueberries. Here's the problem. We create a protective mentality here when we deal with trade. And what we really need to do is to take a look at how we might be able to work collaboratively together to build demand for whatever it is we're growing and raising in both the markets that we want to get into and the markets that we control. So let me give you an example. In the dairy industries, which is the example I know best, in Mexico, we decided that we wanted to export into Mexico dairy products. Well, that could be perceived by the dairy producers in Mexico as a threat. Well, what if we increased consumption? Increased it to the point that it outpaced the ability of the Mexican dairy industry to continue to be productive, and allowed the opportunity for us to continue to import our products into that market. It's a win-win for everybody. It's a win for consumers, it's a win for Mexican farmers, and it's certainly a win for American farmers. So working collaboratively as opposed to in conflict, trying to figure out ways in which we can educate consumers about the benefits of a particular kind of product, whether it's dairy or whether it's potatoes or whether it's peppers or whatever it is, and making sure that people understand that we're growing demand at the same time we're trying to do a trade relationship. I think that's one way of lessening the tension and encouraging more of these restrictive practices that make it more difficult for trade to take place. That's number one. Number two, in this country, making sure that we understand we collectively have to consume more of these fruits and vegetables if we're really going to get on the other side of a serious obesity issue. 70% of Americans today, adults, are overweight or obese. 60% of us have chronic diseases, most of which are connected to diet. 40% of us have 2 or more chronic diseases. The healthcare costs of this are enormous. And the productivity, lack of productivity as a result, is also troublesome. And we have 18.5% of our youngsters who are obese today, and a significant percentage of them are overweight, who will take into adulthood those same chronic diseases, that same productivity challenge. So it's in our best interest for us to figure out that my plate, with half our plate being fruits and vegetables, that's building demand in the United States. And obviously, if you build demand, you have to have supply, and the supply can come from lots of different places.
That's fantastic, Secretary. And I know we're out of time, but a really huge thank you to you. I know you have a very busy schedule and you took time out for us today. I think you're definitely creating a climate for innovation, and we're looking forward to the next 4 to 8 years of improvement in the agriculture world. Thank you very much for joining us.
Appreciate it.